Hi everyone, Denise here. So this is the Pinkfresh Studio in the Meadow class that we did for February 2024. Class was today as I'm recording this. If you ordered a kit to go, I will message you when it's done if I haven't already. Same if you couldn't come last minute for whatever reason. If you were ill, I hope you're feeling better. So I just want to do a quick run through with this. I'm going to sit for some of this. I'm actually standing right now so I can look at the camera and that it's not upside down like usual. But the arm keeps falling-ish, it looks like. It keeps lowering itself. So I may have to get up and adjust the camera at some point. I will try to make it not Blair Witch and hopefully stay within the screen. So your kit included everything that you needed to make these cards, and if you're missing a sheet of white paper here or there, I do apologize. Just grab any white paper you have that is not textured. Any kind of smooth white paper will be fine. I wouldn't use your expensive Copic paper, just any paper from Michael's, Joann's, or if you have some close to my heart, or Stampin' Up paper hanging out there, just plain white paper. Go ahead and grab that if you need to, if I missed it, and my apologies if that's the case. See, I see the camera sneaking down already. All right, so what you're going to do is kind of simple. Now, if you have prepaid the kit, I have cut your happy birthday for you. I have cut your hello for you. I have cut your hello for you. You needed those, but of course you weren't here to cut them, so I did that. You will also find a foam piece. See that foam piece there, here, with the same happy birthday cutout. Yes, it would have been easier had I simply taken the paper off the foam and put the purple paper on and ran it through that way. But the paper is retired and I didn't have a lot of it, and it matched this ink, so that was it. And I have to tell you, I did it on my first try, and if you know me, you know that I have no coordination whatsoever. I can't even layer anything together and have it come out right. And yet I was able to do this, so there is hope. You should be able to do it because I'm a spaz and I did it. So the first thing that you should decide is if you want this card to have just the stencil, or if you want it stamped. Now, I did it with just the stencil because the stencil was the product that came with the class. The stamp and the die were additional. So if you, so I wanted to do one without the stamp because it would have been easier. I mean, the die would have been tricky. You would have had to fussy cut this. But everybody who bought the kit also bought the stamp and the die. So if you want to stamp this because you like it here, you can't really see that, because you like it better stamped than not stamped with just the stencil, go ahead and stamp it. There's nothing that says you have to just use the stencil. Remember, they're your cards. So I am going to say this: you are going to need to stamp your stamp set 3 times, 4 if you're going to use that. Now I'm gonna see if this works on here. Oh yeah, you can see it pretty well. All right, so you've got the stamp. Now this is where the stamp ends. This fits in the regular Misty, not the mini. And if you have the huge one, yeah, of course it'll fit in that. But this fits in the regular, I guess, original size Misty. That's why you have some shorter paper in there that look like they're A2 card bases. It's actually for you to stamp on because that fits. It's 8.5 high, and that fits perfectly in the Misty with this. I used VersaFine Onyx Black ink when I did it because I'm using regular distress inks. I'm certainly not going to color this. You can, but why would you? You have a layering stencil. So I use the VersaFine Black because that is my go-to ink with everything else. The camera keeps falling. You can use Memento. It won't really matter because, again, you're coloring with inks. You're not alcohol versus watercolor versus, you are simply using inks to color with the stencil. So that's the first thing that you want to do, is you want to stamp this set 3 times for sure, 4 times if you want this card to have the image with the stamp. If you want it with just the stencil, then you only need to do 3 stamped images. Now, you're going to need the full thing. Again, it's the full set. So you need the full set 3 times, 4 times if you want the inked image for this card. And again, it's up to you. Doesn't matter. It's your card. Do whatever you want to do. So it's 3 or 4. So that would be the first thing that I would do. And the beauty of video is you can pause and come back when you're ready. You can listen all the way through and then go back and do and pause or rewind. However you do it, it's no wrong way. Here I go with the camera again. I wish I could figure out why it's falling. Everything is tight as can be. So I'm not really sure why it is. I guess it's something to ask Mike later. All right, so after you have stamped everything, you are not going to cut. I know it seems like you should, but you're not going to, because you're going to work with the stencil first. Now, this die, you do not separate it. I know some of them come like this and you have to separate. You get those really sharp edges, no matter what kind of nice little clipper tool you use. But if you look closely, these are fused together. Right? These don't have the little thingies in between where you're going to separate them. When they say don't bend it. But no, this is one set because the stamp is one set. So when you stamp the whole image, you're going to put the die over that image and you're going to cut it all at the same time, which is great because you've got everything done all at once. So the next thing that I want to do with you before we do anything else after you've stamped, because you might as well get the stamping out of the way. I'm going to put a black sheet down here, is you need to get a Sharpie. Whatever color you have, I used a black one because, you know, I'm a teacher. It's my go-to. So whatever color it is, make sure it's dark enough to see, and we're going to number your stencils. So I want you to grab your stencils out of your kit. They're likely in plastic, and they are likely not in order. I did notice that with some of them. We are going to number them because as part of the irregular thing, they did not come numbered. Now, they worked every other way, but they weren't numbered, and it's a little confusing which goes where. So I'm going to do this. I want you to find this stencil. You have 5 of them in your pack. Find that stencil. And again, I'm using the black because I think it's easier for you to see it. Pick a corner, upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right, and continue to use that corner. Now, before you pick a corner, just take a look to make sure that there's nothing, you know, in that corner for the next one, because you always want to be sure that it's in the same spot so that it's easy for you to reference, which is why I tend to stick with an upper corner like this. So once you have found this, make sure that it's this side facing up and put a number 1, whatever corner you want, put a number 1. I also wrote lightest colors down here to remind myself that this one gets my lightest colors. It gets my lightest green, it gets my lightest, in the case of the samples, my lightest purple. Okay, so that's your number 1. So as you need to, go ahead and pause, find it, put your number 1, and then hit play again. This is your number 2. I'm sorry, I know you see the light there. This is your number 2. If I adjust that, does it help? Nope, it doesn't. Sorry. All right, so your number 2. And again, go ahead and pause it on the screen so that you can see it. Hold yours up to it. Make sure that the correct side is facing up, or maybe facing you if you're holding it up. With this particular one, I think this is the easiest thing to try to match up. I mean, the first one was kind of easy. You know, all the leaves are on the one side. They're going to the correct side. So that's kind of easier. This one, maybe not so much. So see these 2 leaves here, and then you've got the 2 here. They should be in this bottom corner. And no, none of the other corners have similar leaves. So that's your number 2. So again, pause as needed and come back when you're done. This is number 3. Now for number 3, the easiest way I found to do it is to look for these 2. This one almost looks like a firecracker burst, you know, like if you looked at it on a piece of paper or a piece of scrapbook paper. And then it's got this down here. So if you find these, there's my number 3. In your same corner, put your 3. Remember, it should be upright like this, right? Or if you're holding it, that's the way it should be when you're looking at it. Go ahead and hit pause as you need to. Welcome back. This is number 4. Of the 2 that are left, this is easy to figure out just which side is which. See the little splotch with a bunch of different things here? That's in the corner down here. The opposite corner has this, and there's nothing up here. Let me hold this away from the light. There's nothing up in those corners, but there are down here. So these two, this one, that's face up. This light is really bothering me, this glare. And then your last one is obviously number 5, but which way does it go? This looks like a little chicken scratch. That's at the bottom. The little Y-shapey thing, that's the top. So this should be at your bottom left. This should be in your upper right. It's not this way, not flipped. Okay, bottom left, upper right, and put a 5. Okay? All right, so those are your stencils. So now that you have them labeled, you can get out whatever you need to do to color in your stamp. So you can use a sticky mat to do it. You can use washi tape. You can use whatever you need. If you are doing the one with just the stencil though and not the stamp, you need to make yourself some registration marks here. So the side is an example, but you would need to do it at the top also, because the side doesn't tell you how far up to go. So registration marks, for those of you who are unfamiliar, are when you go on the edge of the stencil. So you see this here, you can see clearly where my stencil was. So if I put number 1 over that, right? I know it goes between those 2 lines. Now the problem with not doing it at the top is where do they go? So now this I can line up, of course, because I already did it. But if I hadn't colored anything in, or if I hadn't stamped anything, and I'm doing number 3, how do I know where it goes? I mean, it's between the lines, but how do I know where? Because the stamp was the same length as the paper I gave you, but the stencil is longer. So you see how it doesn't really line up? So you would need those registration marks to do that. So that's why you do it. And when you do it at the top, again, when you have the stencil, you'd start the stencil. Let me get to number 1. So you would start the stencil here. Now notice mine is off the paper at the top. You would be on the paper with your brush and your ink. Make a nice dark line across, and do it with whatever color you're using first. That way if it goes in, it's no big deal. And then you'll get lines like this on the top, and then you can slide the next stencil right on in, because you'll have a line at the top, you'll have a line at the sides, good to go. So I do recommend doing that, okay? And I would keep that in mind when I'm stamping on my paper. So you may want to stamp closer to the bottom to leave yourself some space at the top. It is completely up to you. This is not the size paper that I gave you. So this is just paper that I used when I was figuring things out, and I just wanted to show you this. All right? Okay. So once you color, when you're using it, your first stencil, if you're following my sample, so we're going to look at this card. So grab your purple. Your purple will have the happy birthday and the hello cut out of it. That's okay. You're not going to see it. You're going to cut a piece of white. I'm going to tell you in a minute. You're going to do your card base. And you're going to need 2 of your stamped images plus this happy birthday. So you need a 9x4 slimline card base, which means you need a piece of paper that's cut 9x8, and you score it on the 8-inch side to 4 inches so that when you fold it, it's 9x4. Your purple is pre-cut to 9x4. You can adhere that directly onto your card base. And then you're cutting this white piece, and that white piece is 8 3/4 by 3 3/4. 8 3/4 by 3 3/4. See it there? So that's your white piece. So I said here about the registration marks, right? And there, so if you need to screenshot that, go ahead. So those are the colors that I used. So the first layer for number 1, I used, let's see here. I use shabby shutters for the leaves at the top. And I use wilted violet for the flowers at the bottom. Now, if this is too close for comfort for you, then just put some washi tape over this or a Post-it or something over it. That way you don't have any issues. Now, you don't want to leave it there for too long. You don't want the washi tape to pull up your stamped image or rip it or anything, and then you've wasted it and you got to do it again. So a Post-it over this might be better, or washi tape just over this might be better. Or if you're unlike me and very careful and cautious and neat, you may not have a problem. So number one, we get shabby shutters for the leaves and gets wilted violet for the flowers. I'm looking for my number two. Number two, I believe this is all leaves. So my next layer of leaves, I used crushed olive. And again, I'm using regular Distress inks. That's what I used on this. Okay, so the whole thing, I believe, in crushed olive. Number three, you know what, let's take this and let's just make sure here, right? That makes sense. All right, so you see how that lines up? So those are all leaves, so yep, all leaves, so that's all crushed olive. So let's see where number three is. Number three, I believe, has the darker ones, right? Okay, so there's where number three is going to go. So number three for the green, I used peeled paint. And for the flowers down here, I used Villainous Potion. Number four are the berries. See the berries there? They're in the pink. For the berries, I used Kitsch Flamingo. And then there's number five, which is this. Now, of course, it would line up better if I had registration marks, but I don't. So it's the darker of the leaves. And for that one, I used Mowed Lawn. And I did that for each of them. And what I found to be easier, and maybe it's just because of my Christmas cards and the assembly line process that I'm used to, I stamped everything I needed first. And then I colored everything. And then I die cut everything. And then I did my cards. So it's up to you, however you work, however the process works for you. But I did find that when I did the 3 stamped images, I took stencil number 1, I colored it, I removed it, put my next stamped image. So I did all the number 1s first, put it to the side. I took back my stamped images, I took my number 2 stencil, I did all the number 2s, put it to the side. That way I wasn't doing 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't have to worry about, am I getting the right colors? You know, am I keeping them separate? It was done and I could move on and I could just cut everything at the same time. That's the way I do it. Your process is how you do it. So I'm trying to see here what I wrote. No, it should be fine. Nope, I'm not seeing anything else in there. So that's what I did. So then what I did was I took this piece, and you'll see it cuts, right? That whole piece. Try to line that up for you. So this whole piece is this bottom. See this here? And it's the same. The top and the bottom mirror each other. So once you have one done, just do the same thing in reverse down here. So one is upside down, one is right side up maybe. They're facing each other, as you can see from the vines here. So this was the big piece. This one here, this flower, is this piece. And I glued that directly here. This 3 flower piece is this one right here. I am going to tilt this a little better because down it goes. Is this piece right here. And I did pop that. I don't know if you can see. Maybe try sideways a little bit. I think you can see there how it's popped a little bit. So I popped that. So what I did was I placed this and then I popped that and then I glued this and slid it under. I also had nope, the berries are there. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pull this off camera, make sure that that's all I used. 1, 2, 3. It isn't. I did use this piece down here. Is that piece there? That piece is sticking out, if you can see there. Right, that's the thing, but it just needed something else. So I used 1, 2, 3, 4. Bottom, popped. On top, flat, but first, this one faced that way, popped, then glue, slid it under. It's the beauty of liquid glue. And then this piece slid under on the other side. And that's what I did for the bottom. If you look at the bottom, it's exactly the same way. Exactly the same. And then I took my purple happy birthday and the foam, took the paper off of the foam. It's the whiter side. I think this side looks more yellow. It's the whiter side, but of course it's already cut for you, so that should probably seem obvious, unlike what I'm thinking it'll look like. Take the paper off, carefully put this on, place it on here, take the back paper off, place it on here. You have a nice thick foam sentiment and you're done. Isn't this great? I love this. I mean, it is a little bit of work, not gonna lie, but I would mass produce this if I could, and maybe I will at some point. It's always, isn't it a shame, right? It's always the prettiest ones, always take the most time, but I guess that's always why they're the prettiest ones, I think. All right, so then let's look at this. This is a mini slimline. So again, if you bought the kit, you have this pre-cut, you have your hello pre-cut. So this mini slimline, you're gonna take one of the white sheets of paper that you have there, one of the big ones, the 8.5 by 11. You are going to cut the 8.5 inch side down to 6 1/4, 6.25, and cut the long side down, the 11 inch side down to 7 inches. So when you're done, you'll have a shape, rectangle-ish, of 6.25 or 6 1/4 by 7. And the 7 inch side, score it at 3.5, so down the middle. So that when you fold it, you have this. Whoops, upside down. You have this, which I know you can't see because it's on camera. You can't really see it in person. So then take your craft paper cutout and glue it flat directly onto the base. And you can either take your hello and do that first, or you can do the spray first. Personally, I did the hello first because I wanted to make sure it fit and I didn't do my flowers like too much or too far over or too low, and then, you know, I was stuck. So I would personally do the hello first. And then we have the flowers. Now you've already cut them out and everything, so let me see what we're using here. I am definitely using this one. This is this, just in a different direction. And again, you can go ahead and pause, rewind as necessary. So instead of it going this way, I have it that way, right? Because I wanted to spray it across the card. That's flat. Underneath is nothing. Oop, you can't see that. Underneath is nothing. It doesn't look like it because this I popped. So this is another situation where I laid it out first. I popped the ones that needed to be popped and then I stuck the other ones under. Or if I knew exactly where it was, I can flat glue these first and then pop the other and put it where it needs to be. Whatever works best for you is what works. So this is going to be popped. Then I see berries. I think what I did, well, I took this one for sure. And that's this. So this was also flat. These leaves up here, oh, I'm sorry. These leaves here were 3 separate leaves. See these leaves here? Separate leaves that I put there because I felt it needed it. I popped this, right? So that's this one again. And I popped that one here. And this is this. And again, I popped it up. Now I clearly thought it needed more berries, so I took some berries, probably the way it looks, from here and cut off one of the extras that I wasn't using, and I just flat glued them kind of right underneath. And that's how I had the extra berry, because I felt it needed something, and it needed something with color, and those were small and it fit the bill. So that's what I did. And that's it with that one. And then we have the third one. This is a basic A2 card base. So take one of your 8.5 by 11 white sheets, turn it to the 11-inch side, and cut down the middle at 5.5. Stick the other piece to the side. If you need it for stamping, you go right ahead and do that. Take the other side and turn it so that you are scoring the 8.5-inch side at 8.25 inches. 4.25 inches, 4.25. So that you have an A2 card. Your green already has the hello cut out, because again, you're not going to see the middle, and the recipient isn't going to see the middle, so we cut it right out of there. So your hello is here. You can leave it white, or if it's too white, you can always take a little bit of ink from the green that's left on one of your brushes, and you can just lightly, almost like clean your brush, but real lightly give it a little tint, which I did here in spots. I'm just looking to make sure. So your green is already cut for you, but just in case it isn't, it should be 4 by 5.25. So again, it should be 1/4 inch less and fit there. And your white, same thing, 3 3/4 by 5. Okay. So this, whether you use the stencil or the stamp with the stencil, it's still this spray is this. It's the whole thing. And then these 3 leaves are these here. And this is popped. These 4 are flat. The sentiment is flat. 3 leaves are flat. The spray is popped. That's it. That was the whole thing. So the worst of it really is coloring, you know, stamping and coloring. But once you get through that, you're good. And like I said, this, I mean, I do love the cards, and which I don't always say when I make them. You know, they grow on me over time, or they're not my favorite, but you know, it can't always be my favorite, so I try to mix it up a little bit. That said though, these cards, when it comes to something like this with a stamp set and a die and a stencil, a layering stencil, this is something where you could spend, you know, a little bit of time while you're watching TV, or a little bit of free time, whatever you're doing, you could just stamp a whole bunch of them. And then the next time you have free time, take your stencils and start coloring. Again, whether you color 10 of them with stencil 1 one day, then the next day you go back and you do stencil 2, whatever method works for you. And then by the time you have time to do things and you're die cutting, you've got all of these things ready to die cut, and you can mass produce the card. Now for me, that's what works. Making one at a time, it seems too time consuming for me. So I know it's 6 of one, a half dozen of the other, but it's what works for me. Find what works for you and do it. All right, so that's that. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me or post in our Facebook group. If you have this set but you weren't in the class, go ahead and try this out. Try these cards. They're not that difficult. I gave you the measurements that I used. I gave you the inks that I used if you like them, the methods that I used, how I did it. So feel free to go ahead. And if you do, please join our group, Denise's Creative Cave on Facebook. I think it's Creative Cave and Card Classes. So go ahead and join our group and post them so that we can see what colors you use. I will say I did like the purple, and I don't usually gravitate to purple, but I did like the purple, but I would love to see some other colors that you used. So please feel free to join us, whether you're near or far. Post your pictures, and we'll see you again at the class. And if you're local, I hope that we see you in person soon. So if you're on Long Island, definitely look us up. Have a great night, everyone. Thanks for watching.